I noticed it because of the ice. The bartender had overfilled my glass, and as I lifted it, a cube slid against the rim and cracked, sharp and loud like a warning shot. The sound cut through the music, through the laughter, through the low hum of a room filled with people who believed they were witnessing a perfect beginning. That small, sudden sound made me look up. And that's when I saw her. My new mother-in-law stood just a few feet away, close enough that I could smell her perfume. Something expensive, floral, deliberate. She wasn't looking at my face. She wasn't smiling. Her attention was locked on my champagne glass sitting on the bar behind me, untouched, waiting. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. I watched her reflection in the polished brass panel behind the counter. I had personally insisted the venue keep it instead of replacing it with something modern. Now it reflected her movements with brutal clarity. I saw her hand slip into her clutch. I saw the practiced grace of her fingers, steady, unhurried. I saw the tiny vial glint under the lights. 3 drops. Clear, odorless. Gone before anyone else could have noticed. She straightened, smoothed her dress, and stepped away like she'd done nothing more than adjust her lipstick. My heartbeat didn't spike. It slowed. People assume fear feels like panic. For me, fear feels like focus sharpening to a single point. Every sound became precise. The band tuning their instruments. Glasses clinking. My husband's laughter somewhere behind me, easy and trusting. I waited until she reached a table across the room. Then I reached out, calm as if this were part of the evening's choreography, and switched my champagne with the one beside it. Same glass. Same bubbles. Different fate. I didn't drink either. I walked back to the head table, heels steady against the floor, and sat beside my husband. He leaned in, smiling, eyes bright, completely unaware that his mother had just tried to poison his wife on our wedding night. "You okay?" he asked softly. "Perfect," I said, and I meant it. He squeezed my hand. His thumb brushed my ring. There was so much belief in his touch that it almost hurt. Across the room she lifted the glass she thought was mine and met my eyes. Her smile was small. Confident. Victorious. She believed the story was already written. What she didn't know was that I don't stop collapses. I study them. I let structures reveal their weaknesses on their own. Interference too early only hides the cracks. I picked up my water and took a slow sip. Cold, clean, grounding. She took her first drink. I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt inevitability. To understand why I didn't shout, why I didn't grab my husband and drag him away, why I didn't call security, you have to understand this wasn't a sudden act. This was a long project reaching its final stage. From the moment my husband introduced me to his family, I had been a disruption. Not loud enough to confront directly. Not small enough to ignore. The kind of problem people like her prefer to erase quietly. They were legacy people. Generational wealth. Their conversations were about ownership, not effort. Inheritance, not work. I was the opposite. I built things. Fixed things. Got my hands dirty and took pride in it. She clocked that immediately. The first time we met, she looked at my shoes before she looked at my face. Then she asked my husband if I was helping with something. The question was polite. The message wasn't. Over time the slights accumulated. Invitations that never arrived. Conversations that stopped when I entered a room. Compliments shaped like insults. Always subtle. Always deniable. I endured it because I loved him, and because I assumed foolishly that endurance would eventually earn respect. It didn't. 6 months before the wedding she stopped pretending. She invited me to lunch alone. A private room. White tablecloths. Soft music. Control disguised as courtesy. She slid something across the table without looking at me. It wasn't a menu. It was an offer. Enough money to make problems disappear. Enough to tempt silence. Enough to buy distance. "Think of it as a clean exit," she said. "You're not meant for this life." "I'm being kind." I pushed it back to her. "I don't sell myself short," I said. "And I don't leave things unfinished." That was the moment her expression changed. Not anger. Calculation. After that, the pressure escalated. Mistakes began appearing where there shouldn't have been any. Calls made in my name. Vendors confused. Small sabotages designed to exhaust me, to make me doubt myself, to make others question my stability. The week of the wedding it peaked. That's what people like her do when they realize they're losing. They don't retreat. They detonate. So when I saw the vial, I didn't see a crime of impulse. I saw the final move. Across the room, she lifted her glass again and drank more deeply this time, basking in the room's warmth, in the applause, in the illusion that she had won without resistance. I folded my hands in my lap and counted. I didn't know exactly what she'd used, but I knew enough. I knew timing. I knew chemistry followed rules no matter who broke them. The speeches were about to begin. She stood, glass in hand, tapping it lightly with a fork. The room quieted. And that's when I understood something important. She wasn't just trying to hurt me. She was about to make a public statement. And whatever happened next would happen in front of everyone. People like her don't explode right away. They apply pressure slowly, the way deep-sea water crushes steel. Not all at once, but relentlessly until something gives. After I refused her offer, her tactics changed. She stopped pretending I was invisible and started treating me like a liability that needed managing. I would walk into rooms and conversations would soften, shift, redirect. Plans would be made without me standing right there. Smiles became tighter. Questions turned pointed. She never raised her voice. That was her genius. At a charity dinner, she asked me, loud enough for the table to hear, whether I found manual work exhausting, given how close the wedding was. When I answered calmly, she laughed and said she admired my stamina, considering my background. At another event, she introduced me as someone who was still finding her footing, as if I were a temporary employee instead of her son's future wife. Every comment was small enough to deny. Together they formed a pattern meant to wear me down. My husband didn't see it. Or maybe he couldn't. He had grown up inside her gravity. To him this was normal. To question it would have meant questioning his entire childhood. I told myself it didn't matter. That love outweighed discomfort. That this was the price of marrying into a world that didn't understand me. Then the mistake started. A meeting venue cancelled, claiming I'd called and changed the date. A vendor showed up with the wrong order, insisting the instructions came directly from my email. A deposit vanished, reappeared, then vanished again. Always plausible. Always just enough to make me look scattered. I double-checked everything. I documented. I adapted. What she didn't realize was that chaos doesn't scare me. I work inside it. The Real warning came 4 weeks before the wedding. I arrived at the venue early one morning to review final layouts. She was already there, standing in the center of the room, hands clasped, surveying the space like a general inspecting a battlefield. I wanted to help, she said, smiling. She didn't ask what I needed. She didn't wait for instructions. She started pointing out flaws. Sight lines. Sitting. Lighting. She spoke confidently, incorrectly to the coordinator, undermining me without ever addressing me directly. I corrected her once. Calmly. She turned to me and said, "Sweetheart, I've hosted events longer than you've been alive." The room went quiet. That was when I understood something important. This wasn't about control anymore. It was about humiliation. A week later, she crossed a line she couldn't uncross. She invited me to her home under the pretense of clearing the air. Her staff disappeared the moment I arrived. The house felt staged, like a set prepared for a performance. She didn't waste time. "I don't think you understand what you're stepping into," she said, gesturing to the room. "This family has a reputation. A standard." Then she placed a folder on the table. Inside was a breakdown. Numbers. Accounts. A future mapped out without me in it. Money allocated not as a gift, but as compensation. "If you leave now," she said, "we can all be gracious. No one has to be embarrassed." I closed the folder. "I'm not the embarrassment," I said. That was when her composure slipped, just for a moment. Her jaw tightened. Her eyes hardened. She leaned forward. "You don't belong here," she said quietly. "And I will not let you anchor my son to something temporary." Temporary. That word stayed with me. After that meeting, things accelerated. Subtlety gave way to urgency. The florist received a call claiming the wedding was postponed. The officiant was sent a false reschedule. Someone tried to access my personal files. Each incident on its own looked like stress-induced confusion. Together they formed intent. The night before the wedding, I found her in the bridal suite. She stood near my dress, touching the fabric, running her fingers along the seams as if assessing its weaknesses. When she turned, she smiled and said she just wanted to see it up close. After she left, I noticed the damage. A tear, Not large but deliberate. Positioned where movement would worsen it. A flaw waiting to fail under pressure. I repaired it myself. Quietly. Carefully. I didn't tell anyone. Not because I was afraid, but because I was done reacting. By the morning of the wedding I wasn't anxious. I was alert. There's a moment when you realize someone has stopped bluffing. When every action they take becomes sharper, faster, more reckless. They stop caring who sees as long as the outcome bends their way. That's where she was. And that's why when I saw her at the bar with the vial, everything made sense. This wasn't about making me sick. This was about making me collapse publicly. She wanted me weak in front of everyone who mattered. She wanted whispers, pity, speculation. She wanted a narrative where I didn't belong because I couldn't handle the pressure. She wanted to rewrite who I was, permanently. Across the room she laughed with my parents, playing the gracious matriarch. They adored her. Everyone did. Everyone except me. I watched her take another sip of the champagne she believed was meant for me. I watched confidence radiate from her posture. She had no doubt in the plan. That was her mistake. Because I wasn't waiting for revenge. I was waiting for exposure. And when she stood to make her toast, glass raised, voice poised to command the room, I realized something chilling. She had prepared for this moment. She wasn't improvising. She was about to speak. The first tap of the fork against the glass cut through the room like a blade. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Chairs stilled. The band lowered their instruments. Every head turned toward her as she rose from her seat. Champagne flute lifted effortlessly in her hand. She looked flawless. Silver gown, perfect posture. That familiar expression of calm authority that made people lean in instead of questioning her right to speak. She had spent decades mastering that look. The look of someone who belonged at the center of things. My husband glanced at me and smiled, unaware, proud, expectant. I didn't move. I watched her the way you watch a storm roll in, already knowing it's too late to outrun it. Marriage, she began, her voice smooth and well-projected, is about trust. A few guests nodded. Someone murmured approval. It's about knowing the person beside you truly understands the weight of the life you're building together. Her eyes found mine. She held them there longer than necessary. Just long enough. I felt my husband shift slightly beside me, sensing something but not yet understanding it. She continued, speaking about family, legacy, sacrifice. Every word carefully chosen. Every sentence polished. This wasn't spontaneous. This was rehearsed. I raised my water glass and took a slow sip. Across the table she lifted the champagne. To the happy couple, she said, smiling wide enough for the room. She drank. Deeply. The glass emptied faster than I expected. One long swallow. Then another. She set it down with a satisfied breath and returned to her seat, triumphant. Nothing happened. Not immediately. She leaned toward my father, laughing lightly, already moving on. As if the moment had passed exactly as she'd planned. As if she had just sealed the night in her favor. I folded my hands in my lap and counted. 30 seconds. 60. 90. First it was subtle. She paused mid-sentence, blinking more rapidly than before. Her smile faltered, not enough for others to notice but enough for me. She cleared her throat. Touched her neck. 2 minutes. Her laugh came out wrong, short, strained. She shifted in her chair, discomfort creeping into her posture. Someone asked if she was all right. She waved it off, still clinging to composure. Then her hand started to shake. She tried to stand. Gravity disagreed. Her knees buckled and she grabbed the edge of the tablecloth, pulling a centerpiece with her. Crystal shattered. Flowers spilled. Gasps rippled across the room. The illusion broke. What followed wasn't graceful. It wasn't discreet. It was violent. She retched. A harsh, uncontrollable sound that silenced the entire hall. Champagne, bile, and dignity hit the floor together. The smell spread instantly, sharp and unmistakable. People screamed. Chairs scraped back. Someone shouted her name. My husband was on his feet before anyone else, panic flashing across his face as he rushed to her side. Mom. She looked up at him, eyes unfocused, skin drained of color. Her mouth opened but the words wouldn't come out right. I don't feel, she slurred, then collapsed sideways into the mess she'd made. Chaos exploded. I stayed seated for one extra second. Just long enough to take in the scene she had planned for me. Then I stood. Turn the music off, I said to the DJ. He froze for half a beat, then obeyed. Clear a path, I told the coordinator. Call emergency services. People responded without questioning me. Authority shifts quickly in a crisis. She had spent years building hers. She lost it in minutes. My husband knelt beside her, checking her breathing, his medical training overriding shock. He barked instructions, voice tight, controlled. The paramedics arrived fast. As they lifted her onto the stretcher, her clutch slid from her lap and hit the floor. It burst open. Lipstick rolled one way. A compact clattered the other. And then everyone saw it. A small glass vial. Empty. My husband froze. The room seemed to hold its breath. But that wasn't the moment everything changed. That came when I reached down and picked up the folded paper that had fallen beside it. Heavy stationery. Cream-colored. Elegant. I recognized her handwriting immediately. I handed it to my husband. Read this, I said quietly. He stared at me, confused, then unfolded the note. His eyes moved across the page. I watched his face change. The panic drained first. Then the disbelief. Then something colder replaced it. It wasn't a letter. It was a speech. An apology drafted in advance, explaining away my breakdown, blaming stress, alcohol, instability. A script designed to destroy me while pretending to protect the family's image. She hadn't just planned to poison me. She had planned to narrate my ruin. My husband folded the paper slowly and slipped it into his jacket pocket. When he spoke, his voice was flat, metallic. She didn't collapse, he said to the paramedic. She ingested something. Check her bag. Call the police. His father whispered his name, pleading. He didn't turn. As they wheeled her away, I realized something profound had just happened. The woman who controlled every room she entered had lost the story. And once you lose the story, everything else follows. Because the next part, the truth, was no longer mine to protect. It was his to confront. Hospitals have a way of stripping people down to the truth. No silk dresses. No speeches. No carefully curated appearances. Just harsh lights, antiseptic air, and the sound of consequences echoing down tiled hallways. She was stabilized quickly. Whatever she'd taken was meant to humiliate, not kill. That was consistent with everything about her. Cruel, calculated, but always designed to preserve her own image. The police arrived before she fully regained consciousness. An officer with tired eyes and a steady voice took my statement. I didn't cry. I didn't dramatize. I showed him facts. Times. Movements. Patterns. The kind of details that don't argue, they prove. While the paramedics were loading her into the ambulance, I had already contacted the venue manager. I knew exactly where the cameras were positioned. I had insisted on their placement months earlier for unrelated reasons. I received the footage before we reached the hospital. On the screen there it was. Her looking around. Her hand slipping into the clutch. Her fingers tipping the vial. No confusion. No accident. Intent. My husband stepped out of her room while the officer reviewed the video. He looked older than he had that morning. Not tired, changed. Like something fundamental had been cut away. She wants to talk to me, he said quietly. The officer asked, did she confess? He let out a short, humorless laugh. No. She said she did it to protect me. He swallowed once. She said my wife was a threat. That I'd thank her later. I watched him carefully. This was the moment everything balanced on. Years of conditioning versus one undeniable truth. He reached into his jacket and pulled out the folded speech. She wrote this before the reception, he said, handing it to the officer. She planned to frame my wife. This proves premeditation. The officer nodded slowly. Behind us, his father sat with his head in his hands. She's still your mother, he said quietly. Not pleading, warning. My husband turned to him. No, he said. She's a criminal. And if you interfere, you'll be one too. Then he faced the officer again. I'm pressing charges, he said. And I want a restraining order. For both of us. Immediately. That was it. No yelling, no theatrics. Just a clean, irreversible cut. People talk about love as a feeling. That night I learned it's an action. A decision made under pressure when excuses would be easier. He was charged. The family's lawyers circled. They tried to soften the narrative, stress, medication, confusion. None of it held. You can't claim confusion when you prepare a script for the aftermath. She was sentenced months later. Not as harshly as some wanted, but enough. Enough to stain the legacy she worshipped. Enough to ensure distance, accountability, and silence. We didn't move into the family estate. We bought a neglected house on the other side of the city. Crooked floors. Cracked walls. A place with history and damage and potential. Something honest. A year later, I'm sitting at our kitchen table repairing a bowl I dropped last week. I didn't replace it. I didn't hide the crack. I fused it. There's a technique I learned while working disaster sites. How fractured materials can be reinforced at the break instead of erased. When done right, the repaired area becomes stronger than the original surface. That's what happened to us. The night she tried to destroy me, she revealed herself completely. And in doing so, she freed her son from a lifetime of blind loyalty. We didn't survive despite that night. We survived because of it. He trusts my instincts now. I trust his resolve. We don't mistake calm for safety or politeness for kindness. We see threats clearly and we face them together. Sometimes people ask if I regret not stopping her sooner. I don't. Because if I had, she would still be hiding behind her mask. Still whispering. Still manipulating from the shadows. Instead, she chose the stage. And I let her step into the light. If you believe that love means choosing your partner even when it's hard. If you believe toxic family doesn't deserve a seat at your table. And if you believe silence should never protect cruelty. Then like this video, share this story. And tell me in the comments. What's the most shocking thing you've ever seen happen at a wedding?